June 2026. In the heart of Tirana, thousands of Albanians take to the streets chanting one single phrase: Albania is not for sale. What is really happening in this small Balkan country? And why should it matter to those of us who follow markets and economics? At the center of everything is an island. It's called Sazan, known to Italians as Sazino. Small, uninhabited, sitting at the entrance of the Bay of Law. For decades it was a secret military base under the communist regime. Today it's the heart of a billion-euro deal. The name attached to this deal is Jared Kushner, son-in-law of Donald Trump, former White House senior advisor, and now manager of Affinity Partners, a private investment fund with a financial track record that raises more than a few questions. Affinity Partners was founded in 2021, immediately after Trump's first term ended. The fund is not subject to the same anti-money laundering and beneficial ownership reporting requirements as other financial institutions. In practice, it operates with less transparency than a standard regulated investment fund. Who funds Affinity Partners? The largest investor is the Saudi Sovereign Wealth Fund, the public investment fund, which committed $2 billion, despite objections from its own officials, who were overruled by Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. That detail alone tells you a great deal. Since its founding, Affinity Partners has raised over $3 billion. The main backers are sovereign wealth funds from Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Abu Dhabi. This is state money, not anonymous private capital, but resources from foreign governments channeled through the US president's son-in-law. Kushner, during both Trump administrations, has always tied his name to the Middle East. In the first term, he was the architect of the Abraham Accords, the agreements that began normalizing relations between Israel and several Arab nations. Now his reach is expanding into the Balkans. Before Albania, Kushner targeted Serbia. In November, the Serbian parliament passed a special law to allow the construction of a luxury complex in Belgrade, financed by a company linked to Kushner. But by 2025, the fund was forced to abandon that project amid mounting controversy and official investigations. Sazan is a place of almost primordial nature: giant ferns, lavender, maritime pines, a subtropical jungle. For decades it was a secret military base under dictator Enver Hoxha, complete with bunkers, tunnels, and military families living isolated from the outside world. Today it sits at the epicenter of a clash between economic interests and environmental protection. The project envisions luxury hotels, private villas, apartments, and marinas, totaling roughly 10,000 rooms. In essence, an entire tourist city built within one of the richest and most fragile ecosystems in the Adriatic. The resort's management was reportedly to be handed to Aman Resorts, one of the most exclusive hotel brands in the world. The second site involved is the Narta Lagoon, near Zvërnec. These waters are one of the last refuges for the Mediterranean monk seal, and home to over 200 bird species, many of them endangered, including flamingos and Dalmatian pelicans. A protected area, at least on paper. In late 2024, the Albanian government granted strategic investor status to a company called Atlantic Incubation Partners, believed to be linked to Kushner's Affinity Partners Fund. This status provides access to fast-tracked administrative procedures and direct support from government ministries. The strategic investor status was granted on December 30, 2024, with a concession lasting 99 years. The Qatari partners in the project, the Al-Kayat brothers of Power International Holding, reportedly already spent around $200 million acquiring the land, and those land sellers are now under criminal investigation. The first site covers Sazan Island, the former communist military base. The second involves the Zvërnec area, overlooking the Narta Lagoon, a nature reserve of outstanding biodiversity value and a key stopover for countless migratory bird species. Ivanka Trump had already visited the region accompanied by investors and architects. Everything explodes at the end of May 2026. From late May onwards, excavators and heavy machinery enter the protected area, opening access roads, digging through sand dunes, clearing pine trees, and installing fencing. Environmental groups across Albania and Europe immediately condemn the works. Private security guards attack and injure several protesters at the construction site. Authorities respond by suspending police officers and revoking the licenses of 2 private security companies. Footage of the clashes spreads rapidly on social media, igniting public outrage across the country. On June 1st and 2nd, 2026, thousands march through Tirana. Protesters chant "Cancel the project" and wave signs reading "Albania is not for sale" and "Ivanka, go home." By the third consecutive day, The crowd show no sign of dispersing, even after Prime Minister Rama offers to open dialogue. The demonstrations converge on Tirana, where police deploy water cannons against protesters gathered outside the Prime Minister's office. The level of confrontation escalates sharply. This is no longer just an environmental movement. It has become a full-fledged political crisis. During the capital's demonstrations, protesters carry cardboard cutouts in the shape of pink flamingos, one of the protected species that inhabit the Narta Lagoon. A powerful symbol, the endangered animal as a metaphor for a country that feels it is being sold off to the highest bidder. Prime Minister Rama does not back down. He declares, Albania must not be afraid of an extraordinary project like this one. He adds, there is no chance that this investment will stop as long as I am here. A firm stance that only fuels the anger of the demonstrators. But the judiciary moves. Albania's Special Anti-Corruption Prosecutor's Office, known as SPAK, opens an investigation into the funds used to acquire the land titles and their sale to investors. SPAK also investigates the 2024 amendments that changed the protected status of land around Sazan and Zvërnec. The real political danger for Rama lies not so much in the resort itself, but in how it was approved. The accusation is that the government retroactively modified the protected status of the land to clear the way for investors. Is that corruption? A sovereign policy choice? The debate is wide open. Let's step back and think about this from an economic standpoint. Why would a small country like Albania accept a deal like this? The answer is almost always the same. It needs capital, infrastructure, and growth. And that, to be fair, is true. Albania is a country undergoing rapid transformation. Prime Minister Rama has set an ambitious target, closing all EU accession negotiation chapters by the end of 2027, with full membership by 2029, a year ahead of schedule. Attracting foreign investment is a core part of that acceleration strategy. The project is presented as capable of injecting 1.4 billion euros into the Albanian economy and creating around 1,000 jobs in construction and operations. Had it been planned in an already urbanized area, it might well have been celebrated as a success story. The problem is where it's located. Albania has 450 kilometers of coastline that remained largely undeveloped throughout the decades of communist rule. Protest groups fear that these last pristine stretches of shoreline could be rapidly seized by powerful investors with political connections. This is a window that, once closed, cannot be reopened. From an economic environmental perspective, hyper-concentrated luxury tourism on a protected area is a high-risk model. It destroys the very natural capital that made it attractive in the first place. It's a classic paradox, killing the goose that lays the golden eggs in order to sell the eggs faster. And here is a detail that no one following financial markets should overlook. By 2024, Affinity Partners, despite raising over $3 billion, had returned zero profits to its investors, a fund that generates no returns. And yet the capital keeps flowing in. So the real question is, why? The answer is that Affinity Partners is not merely a financial instrument. It is a diplomatic one. Gulf sovereign wealth funds don't commit $2 billion to a zero-return vehicle to optimize their portfolio. They do it to buy political access. This is an economy of influence, not an economy of returns. Kushner was the architect of the Abraham Accords, which brought about normalization between Israel and several Arab countries. His Gulf investors were on the verge of normalizing ties with Israel before October 7, 2023. The network of relationships sustaining Affinity Partners is also a geopolitical network. And that changes everything. Now we reach the deepest layer of this story. Sazan is not just any island. It sits at the entrance of the Bay of Vlorë, 5 kilometers from the tip of Cape Guhezes. Whoever controls Sazan controls access to the southern Adriatic. That has always been the case, and it still is today. Sazan was under Italian control from 1920 to 1947. The Royal Italian Navy stationed there to guard the entrance to the Adriatic. On a clear day, the island is still visible from the coast of Salento in southern Italy. Then came the USSR, then Horja's regime. Every major power of the 20th century understood its strategic value. Within the same Bay of Vlorë, at Oricum, lies the Pasha Liman naval base. Turkey rebuilt it under a 1992 military agreement, and the Turkish Navy retains rights to use it. So within the same bay, we now have American capital, Turkish military presence, and the Kushner Resort project, all converging in one place. The Bay of Law is where Kushner's resort, the Turkish naval base, and Israeli defense interests all converge. We are talking about a critical node of the Mediterranean where the strategic interests of at least 4 distinct geopolitical actors overlap. The resort is the visible part. What lies beneath is far more significant. Context matters here. Albania has been a NATO member since 2009. Rama has cultivated a close relationship with Washington. Granting a fund closely tied to the US president's son-in-law and near-century-long special concession is not just an economic choice, it is a geopolitical alignment, a declaration of loyalty wrapped in a real estate deal. Albania is aiming to join the European Union by 2029. Accession requires adherence to the rule of law, environmental protection standards, and transparent public procurement. These are exactly the same principles that the Kushner deal appears to undermine, a contradiction that Brussels cannot ignore indefinitely. And what about Italy? Rome is Albania's largest trading partner, with 3,000 Italian companies operating in the country. Italy signed a 10-sector cooperation agreement with Tirana in November 2025 and pledged a naval vessel to patrol Albanian waters. Yet on the Sazan dossier, Italy is essentially absent from the conversation. For Rome, geopolitics is apparently too complicated a subject. A sobering realization: the island Italy controlled for nearly 30 years, the one that guarded the entrance to the Adriatic, is now becoming an American-Qatari business venture. And Italy watches from the sidelines. Opposition to the project extends well beyond the Albanian streets. Environmental groups from across Albania and other European countries have condemned the works underway inside the nature reserve. The European Parliament and several international NGOs are watching the situation closely. And there is a relevant precedent. In Serbia, by 2025, Kushner's fund was forced to walk away from a major development project following controversy and official investigations. The Kushner model in the Balkans has already failed once. What happens in Albania depends largely on how long Rama can withstand the pressure from the streets. Edi Rama is a complex figure. A painter, a former mayor of Tirana, long regarded as one of the Balkans' most progressive reformist leaders. He transformed Tirana from a grey post-communist city into a capital with its own visual and cultural identity. But this deal is putting him in a very difficult position. Rama denies the project encroaches on the nature reserve and insists Albania deserves to become a world-class tourism destination. His logic is understandable. A small country with limited domestic capital must attract foreign investment to grow. The problem is the price being paid in terms of governance and transparency. By the third consecutive day of protests, demonstrators had already rejected Rama's offer to select a delegation of 20 people to discuss potential solutions. Public trust in the government has clearly eroded. These protests are not only about Kushner, they are about a style of governance perceived as opaque and subordinated to foreign interests. Albania's protests have deeper roots. They have been ongoing since November 2025 and include allegations of electoral fraud and corruption scandals involving government figures. The Kushner affair did not cause the unrest, but it has become its most powerful catalyst. So what happens next? Let's map out the possible scenarios. We can identify 3 main paths forward, each with different economic implications for Albania, for investors, and for the stability of the wider region. Scenario 1. The project goes ahead. Rama holds the line, SPAK closes its investigation without major political consequences, and Kushner gets his resort. Albania receives part of the investment and some jobs, but surrenders an ecologically sensitive area for 99 years. A short-term win, with long-term costs that are still impossible to quantify. Scenario 2. The project is suspended pending environmental impact assessments and a review of the concession terms. This is the most technically correct solution, but politically fragile. It would require Rama to back down without losing face, which is extremely difficult after declaring the project will never stop. Scenario 3. The project collapses, as it did in Serbia. The pressure from the streets, the SPAK investigation, and international scrutiny, particularly from the EU, forced the Albanian government to reverse course. The political cost for Rama would be high, but it could actually strengthen Albania's institutional credibility on the path to European membership. There is a fourth scenario, one that cold-eyed analysis often overlooks: civil society wins. The protests sustain, the pressure holds, and the government is ultimately forced to open a genuine, transparent review process. That would be a defeat for Kushner and Rama, but a victory for the principle that the rule of law is not for sale. Not even at €4 billion. The people in Albania's streets are not asking to block investment. They are asking that investment happen within the law, with transparency, with genuine environmental safeguards, and without handing over one of the Mediterranean's most precious natural areas for a century to a foreign fund in exchange for promises. If this analysis gave you a clearer picture of what is happening in Albania, drop a like and subscribe to the channel. We will keep following how this story develops, because what happens on Sazan is not only Albania's story. It is a story about all of us, and about the kind of Europe we want to live in.